I wanted to make my family proud, and I don't understand why I'm different from all the other kids. A lot of people don't know that I had a brain injury when I was a child. One day at school, somebody says, hey, look at all the fire engines outside. And most of the kids in the class never saw a fire engine, and firefighters are like my heroes. I want to see it. I take my chair, and I carry it to the windowsill, I put it down here, and I climb on it, and I can just kind of see the outline of it, and I see the firefighters, and I'm on my bliss. And just when I had that highest moment, one of the other kids is grabbing my chair, and I go back to turn like this to see who's doing it, and I fall head first right into the radiator, and I was bleeding, everywhere. There was a pool of blood. And my parents, the way they describe it, it was very traumatic. They said that I was never the same, and especially when it came to learning. I mean, I became painfully shy, I wasn't myself, and where it really showed up was in school, because I didn't understand things very well. And teachers would have to repeat themselves over and over and over. I became so introverted and not talking to anybody. And the big thing was also I couldn't read. I would just look at pages and I just see letters and they didn't mean anything to me. We would get in circles and the teacher would give a book out, and one by one you would have to read out loud to the other students. And my heart's beating out of my chest right now even thinking of it, because every time somebody finished, it would get closer, the book would get closer and closer and closer to me. And I would just, because I couldn't read. And then when the book got to me, I just didn't know what to do. And I would just stare at it and I would just start crying. The teacher would come and take the book and then pass it on to the next person. And I remember my teacher pointing to me, talking to another adult, saying, that's the boy with the broken brain. And I always thought, it really pushed something deep inside of me saying that I'm not enough. There's something that was wrong with me, that I wasn't like everybody else, that I couldn't be like them. And it took me actually an extra 3 years to learn how to read. I taught myself by reading comic books when my parents thought I was sleeping. I would be under the covers with my flashlight every night looking at the pictures. My favorite comic books growing up were the X-Men. Not because they were the strongest or the fastest, it's just they didn't fit in because they were mutants and they were bullied like I was bullied, and they were pushed aside and told that they weren't worth anything. It was a metaphor for me of what people were capable of and what humans are, their potential is. At night when I was doing my nighttime reading, I found out that School of the Gifted, Professor X's school for the superheroes, was in Westchester, New York. And that's where I grew up, in the suburbs of New York City. The next day, I got on my bicycle and I started riding around my neighborhood trying to find the school for the X-Men. And I did that consecutively. Every single weekend, that's what I did. It brought the words to life and I learned what reading was for me. And so I remember though, we had a parent-teacher conference where my parents came in. I had one chance to really succeed, and it was this book report. They were willing to make this my book report, to count it more because I was not doing well. And we decided on a topic, and that topic was on Leonardo da Vinci. She thought that it would be interesting, for me to study, to learn about, this genius. They say that he had dyslexia and he had some learning challenges. And I had this heart-to-heart talk with my parents saying, I know I haven't measured up to this point, but I'm gonna make you proud. And I picked up every single book on Leonardo da Vinci. I mean, I just dreamt about Leonardo, and at breakfast I would read about Leonardo, and everything was about this person. This was where the spotlight is on you and you have to be able to perform, and this is gonna decide if I was something. And that it was more than a book report. And when we get there in class, the teacher said, okay, Jim, I want you to give a presentation in front of the class about it. And my life just, right now, my world just crumbled. Because growing up with learning difficulties, I was painfully shy, because it was like going back to that reading circle again, where I had to talk in front of a group of people, because up to that point, I never did that. And so I looked her right in the eyes, because my heart was beating on my chest, I was sweating so much. And I said, I didn't do the book report, and I basically lied. She just took me for my word, and I got a 0. While I had in my backpack, bound this book report, which signified all my dreams and my potential there. I remember to this day walking up, out of the classroom, and there was a trash can right there, and I threw the book report in there. And along with that, everything in terms of my hopes and my abilities, my pride, my promises, it just felt like it just went in the trash. And I still look back with, regret and sorrow that I didn't step up to be able to do that. But I was a product at that moment of my conditioning. I was believing my self-talk that I wasn't enough. Your brain is this supercomputer, and your self-talk is the program it will run. So you have to be very mindful of your thoughts. And so when you grow up with these challenges and you're the boy with the broken brain, you suffer and struggle and you wonder why. At the age of 18, I wanted to run away. I didn't know how to tell my parents how I was going to quit school. And I remember at that time, my friend said, hey, why don't you come with me over the weekend? I'm gonna go visit my family, get some space, get some perspective. And I go to California, and I remember like it was yesterday, the father is walking me around his property and asked me a very innocent question, a question you would ask an 18-year-old kid, but it was the worst question on earth to ask me. How's school? I break down and I just collapse and I just start crying to this complete stranger because of all the pressure that I'm holding in. And I tell him my whole story about growing up with learning challenges and difficulties and my brain injury, and I'm gonna disappoint my parents and be a bad role model to my younger brother and my younger sister. And he looked at me and he asked me a question. It's, Jim, why are you in school? What do you wanna be? What do you wanna do? What do you wanna have? What do you wanna share with the world? I didn't have any answers because I'd never asked myself that question before. And he pulls out a journal out of his back pocket and he takes out a couple of sheets of paper, tears them out and hands them to me with a pen, and he makes me write down my answers. And he looks at me and he says, Jim, you are this close to everything on that list. And he spreads his index fingers about a foot apart. And I'm thinking, there's no way. Give me 10 lifetimes, I'm not gonna crack that list. And he takes his index fingers and he puts them to the side of my head. And between that, obviously is my brain, meaning that's the bridge to everything that I need in life. That's the key to unlock this, to unlock my dream life. And so fast forward, I'm back at school and I'm sitting at my desk and I have a pile of books that I have to read for school and a pile of books that I committed to that I want to read. So what do? I don't eat, I don't sleep, I don't work out, I don't do anything. I don't spend time with friends. I just live in the library. After a while, I end up passing out one night in the library. I fall down a flight of stairs again. I hit my head again, and I wake up in the hospital 2 days later, and I have wasted away. I'm down to 117 pounds. I thought I died. I mean, it was the darkest time in my life because I felt like, what's my value on this planet? But when I woke up in that hospital bed, another part of me woke up saying there has to be a way of fixing this. And as soon as I had that thought, the universe responded. The nurse came in with a mug of tea, and on that mug of tea was a picture of a genius, Albert Einstein, and it had a quote, "The same level of thinking that's created your problem will not solve your problem." And it made me ask another question again. What's my problem? And I said, my problem is I have a very slow brain. I'm a very slow learner. Maybe I could learn how to learn faster. And I was like, okay, where do I go to learn? And I thought, oh, school. And I started looking through all the classes and I started reading every single one. And I realized all these classes are on what to learn, but there were 0 classes on how to learn. How does my brain work so I could work my brain? How does my memory work so I could work my memory? And I made that my study. And that was my aha moment. A light switch just went on. And I started to understand things for the very first time. I started to have better focus. I started to read faster and I wasn't getting distracted all of a sudden. I mean, I started to make friends. I started to be more confident and being more happy and having more joy and enjoying myself. And I remember when I had that epiphany, I couldn't help but help other people, because why did I have to suffer and struggle, go through all this difficulty when I could have been taught these easy to learn techniques about how my mind worked, how memory worked? And so I wanted to start helping everybody. That's been my quest for the past 25 years. And I remember recently, I remembered somebody's name in an audience, and that person referred me to the chairman of 20th Century Fox. And I get a call from their office saying, hey, I heard about your work. I want you to please come in and spend a half a day with our executive team. And I go there on a Friday morning and I give one of the best trainings I've ever done. When I'm done, the chairman of 20th Century Fox comes to me and says, Jim, this was incredible, one of the very best trainings we've ever offered. And I see a movie poster of Wolverine. And it was for a movie, it wasn't coming out for a few months. And I was like, wow, I can't wait to see that film. And the chairman comes to me and says, Jim, I didn't know you liked superheroes. Like, we have another 30 days of filming the new X-Men movie in Montreal. How would you like to go there and be there and just experience it? And I was like, that's incredible. I've never been on a movie set before. And so he picks me up the next morning, Saturday morning, 8 o'clock. We get on the plane, they call it the X-Jet. Waiting on the plane for me is the entire cast of X-Men. I see Wolverine and Professor X, and I'm sitting between Jennifer Lawrence and Halle Berry, and I get to share some of my brain tips and speed reading and memory tips to these amazing superheroes. And when we get to Montreal, the very first scene took place in Charles Xavier's superhero school. And I'm still this 9-year-old boy, and I'm looking at this school, the place I've always dreamed, that I've always searched and seeked for. And I got to see my superheroes come to life right in front of me. When I go home after that, there's a package waiting for me. And it's the size of maybe a television. And I open it up, and it's this photograph of me and the entire cast of X-Men. There's a note in there from the chairman of Fox. And it says, "Jim, thank you so much for sharing your superpowers with all of us. I know you've been looking for your superhero school ever since you were a child. Here's your class photo." What I've learned is this: a lot of people say, "Oh, I'm not that smart," or "How smart am I?" or "How smart are my kids?" They're asking the wrong question. It's not how smart you are, it's how are you smart. A superhero for me is somebody who is on the path of discovering and developing their superpowers, like their strengths, their unique ability, their unique talents. And I feel like the world needs more superheroes, and the world deserves more of us to be able to show up, that there's a superhero version of all of us. Find your superpower.
I said, I can't move. I said, there's a shock going through my whole body. I can't feel anything, man. I still remember the day I was in the film room watching film, and I was watching the California Bears, and my defensive backs coach, Larry Slade, came in the room. He said, "Inky Johnson, I got some good news for you." And I dropped the clicker, and I said, "Coach, what is it?" He said, "Son, you're a projected top 30 draft pick." He said, "All you have to do is play these next 10 football games. You're an automatic multimillionaire." I ran out of the room. I got on the phone. I called my mother and my grandmother. I said, "Listen," I said, "after this season, our lives are about to change forever." And little did I know our lives were really about to change. The first game we come out, play against California Bears, I get an interception, we shut them down, we get the victory. Second game, we're playing against Air Force. It gets late in the game, found ourselves in a dogfight. And I approach the tackle like I approach any other tackle. And the way I'm approaching it, either I'm gonna knock you out or you're gonna knock me out. I'm 165 pounds, I can't play with anybody. But at the point of contact, when I hit this guy, something different happened that had never happened to me before in my life. I hit him, and it seemed as if every breath in my body left. My body went completely limp. I fell to the ground. I blacked out. I looked at the doctor because I couldn't feel my right arm. They had poked me with all type of needles. "Inky, can you feel this? Can you feel?" I couldn't feel a thing. They took me back. They ran the CAT scans, and they rolled me back into my room, and I'll never forget it. All in about a 15-second time frame, I was lying there in my bed. My father, he went to take a step in, and he looked at me, and he said, "Son, I can't do it." And he walked out. My mother, she came in. She was running. She kissed me on my forehead. She said a prayer. She said, "Ink, everything is going to be okay." And she ran out. And as soon as my mother stepped outside of the room, the doctor rushed in from the opposite side, and he said, "Hey, get in here. We got to rush this guy back to emergency surgery. He's about to die." I said, "What?" I said, "My mom just told me everything was going to be okay." He said, "Son, what happened? You have busted up subclavian artery in your chest. You're bleeding internally. Have to rush you back and take the main vein out of your left leg and plug it into your chest in order to save your life." And when I woke up from recovery, the same doctor was standing over me. He said, "Inky, I have some good news and some bad news for you." I said, "You got some bad news for me?" After telling him I was about to die, I'm still alive. How bad can it get? I'm still here. He said, "The good news is, son, we saved your life." I said, "Thank you, sir." He said, "The bad news is you have nerve damage in your right shoulder. You probably can never play the game of football again in your life." I said, "Doc, no disrespect, man, but I'm 8 games away. I've been working for this ever since I was 7 years old. Doc, there's no way. God, not now, God. Like, let me make it to the NFL so I can help my family first. Like, we miss meals." I said, "There's no way. I never cheated. I never cheated myself. I gave everything I had to it, and I respected it. I never cheated. There's no way that my career can be over." I said, "Send me up to the Mayo Clinic." And after several visits, I'll never forget, this is when reality set in. It was me, my mother, my father in the room, and the doctors came in. They said, "Inky Johnson, here's the deal." They said, "Son, we hate to tell you, but your arm, it would never be the same again. Your hand, it would never be the same again. Son, you can never play the game of football again." They said, "Son, here are your surgery options. We could take a muscle out of the back of your left leg, plug it into your right arm, but there's a possibility that you'll be left with a weak left leg and a weak right arm the rest of your life. Or we could take a nerve out of your left arm, reroute it up to your chest, down into your right arm, but there's a possibility that you'll be left with 2 weak arms the rest of your life. Or we could take a nerve out of your left rib, reroute it up to your chest, down into your right arm, but there's a possibility that you'll be left with a breathing problem and a weak right arm the rest of your life. By the way, tell us what you want to do in the morning." And the next morning, I walked into the doctor's office. They said, "Son, what option did you choose?" I said, "No disrespect to you, doc. I'm not choosing an option. My situation is out of your hands." I said, no disrespect to you, Doc. Cut me where you gotta cut me. I said, I know I will come out of this situation okay. As I stand right here on this stage before you today, they cut me 6 times down my left thigh. They cut me 2 times across my right rib. They cut me 2 times across my right pec. They cut me 1 time across the left side of my neck, 1 time across the right side of my neck. They cut me from the bottom of my armpit all the way down to the bottom of my hand. And after they got through cutting on me, they said, son, you're gonna be in this hospital for the next 40 days. I walked out of the hospital on the 3rd day. They said, you broke a record. How did you do it? And I said, first and foremost, the thing I want y'all to understand, I will never let a circumstance or a situation define my life. But most importantly, you know what I had invested? I had sweat equity. I had been working my whole life. And what I didn't understand, by being determined to chase something, by being committed to it, and what commitment is staying true to what you said you were going to do long after the mood that you have set it in has left. You see, people think commitment is saying, yes, I'll do it on the days when it feels good. But I have been committed to everything that I ever started in my life, and I never stopped and I never quit it. And so by being committed to everything that I started, I finished it. It built a certain type of spirit. It built a certain type of mentality. It built a certain type of individual. And so now I couldn't quit even if I wanted to. I couldn't lay in the bed even if I wanted to. I couldn't stop even if I wanted to. I had too much sweat equity in my life and everything that I was doing. I understood the process is more important than the product. It wasn't about the outcome for me. Whether I made it to the NFL or not, that was inconsequential in God's plan for my life. But I was going to fall in love with that process because I understood by falling in love with that process, it was going to turn me into a machine. A lot of people need a little extra money to get motivated. A lot of people need, whatever the case may be, a little bonus to get motivated. I don't need anything but breath in my body and life. And every day I wake up, I understand I got 2 children depending on me. I understand I got a wife depending on me. I understand I got a world that needs me. The reason I go at life with the passion and the zeal that I go at it with is because I understand every day of my life is somebody in the world that is dependent on me. It may not be you, and if it's just about you, you're in trouble because I'm telling you, you're gonna hit something in life that's a lot tougher than you, and it's gonna test your will and it's gonna test your heart. And if it's just about you and if it's just about the product, it will crush you. Every day I get up, I understand it's somebody in the free world that's looking at me to see if I'm gonna keep going, and so I can't quit. And so I went back to school the next week after they had just saved my life. I was back in class. I had to learn how to write all over again. I had to learn how to walk all over again. I had to learn how to tie my shoe all over again. I had to learn how to bathe all over again. I had to learn how to live life all over again. Never one time did I say, let me go home, I need a break. You see, the thing we have to understand about everything that we're a part of, first and foremost, it's a blessing by God. And when it's a blessing, you can't help but to give everything you got to it. My life got saved. I got spared my life. I almost died. The doctor came to me on the field. He was on one knee and he grabbed my wrist and he said, son, you don't have a pulse. I don't even know how you're still living. The thing about it, my wound, like you can see this. You can see my arm. My wound is visible. But it's a lot of people in this room that are wounded and you can't see it. And it's internal. And so the opportunities that we pass up to be a blessing to other people, we can save their life with just one encounter. In my last doctor visit, they came to me and they said, sorry, Inky Johnson, you will never be able to use this arm or hand again in your life. I said, no disrespect to you, doc, but I will use this arm and this hand every day for the rest of my life by the way that I live my life. Every day, I'm going to impact someone's life. Every day, I'm going to empower someone. Every day, I'm going to inspire someone. Every day, I'm going to encourage someone.
I lived in death for 10 days. I was on a training bike ride with my fellow teammates, headed for the 1988 Winter Olympics in Calgary. As we made our way up to the beautiful Blue Mountains west of Sydney, it was the perfect autumn day. We'd been on our bikes for around 5.5 hours when we got to the part of the ride that I loved, and that was the hills, because I loved the hills. I looked up to see the sun shining in my face, and then everything went black. Where was I? What was happening? My body was consumed by pain. I'd been hit by a speeding truck with only 10 minutes to go on the bike ride. I was airlifted from the scene of the accident. I'd broken my neck and my back in 6 places. My whole right side was ripped open and filled with gravel. My head was cut open across the front, lifted back, exposing the skull underneath. I had head injuries, I had internal injuries, and I had massive blood loss. For 10 days, I drifted between 2 dimensions. I was in the fight of my life. After 10 days, I made the choice to return to my body. And when I did, the massive internal bleeding miraculously stopped. The next question was whether I would walk again, because I was paralyzed from the waist down. I woke up in intensive care to the news that the operation had been a success, because at that point I had a little bit of movement in one of my big toes, and I thought, great, because I'm going to the Olympics. But then the doctor came over and said to me, matter-of-factly, Janine, the operation was a success, but the damage is permanent. There's central nervous system nerves and there is no cure. So although we think you may get some feeling back from the waist down, you will have internal injuries for the rest of your life. You will have to use a catheter. And if you walk again, it will be with calipers and a walking frame. You're going to have to rethink everything you do in your life because you are never going to be able to do the things you did before. I was an athlete. My body was everything. If I couldn't do that, if I wasn't that, then who was I? After almost 6 months, it was time to leave the spinal ward. I was in a wheelchair and a plaster body cast. All I wanted to do was to go home and get my life back and learn how to walk. But the head nurse at the hospital had said, Janine, I want you to be ready because when you get home, something is going to happen. She said, you're going to get depressed. I said, not me, not Janine the machine. She said, it happens to everybody. I was in a wheelchair, a plaster body cast, attached to a catheter bottle. I had no feeling from the waist down. I wanted my life back. I wanted to put my running shoes on and run out the door. But I couldn't. And I got depressed. And there were days when I didn't want to get out of bed and days when I didn't get out of bed. And I can remember my mum sitting on the bed and we were both crying and she said, I wonder if life will ever be good again. And I thought, how could it? Because I've lost everything that I valued. At home, sitting outside in my plaster body cast, an aeroplane flew over my house. And in that moment, my eyes and my mind were open. I stopped asking, why me? And I began to ask, why not me? And I looked up and I thought, well, that's it. If I can't walk, then I might as well fly. So weeks later, my mum and my friend Chris, they bought me a pair of baggy overalls and they drove me to the local airport, Bankstown Airport, and they carried me in. And I held onto the counter because I couldn't even stand on my own. I said, I'm here for my flying lesson. And they ran out the back to draw short straws. Oh my God. And this guy came out, Andrew. He said, hi, I'm going to take you flying. I said, great. So they put me in the car and they drove me down to the tarmac. And there on the tarmac was a red, white and blue airplane. I had never seen anything so beautiful before. They lifted me up into the aircraft. They put me in the front seat. They did my seatbelt up. He got a clearance from the tower and he took off down the runway. And as the wheels lifted off the runway, I felt the most incredible sense of freedom. And then as we flew over the training area at Bankstown Airport, Andrew said to me, he said, right, you see those mountains over there? And I said, yes, as I looked towards the Blue Mountains west of Sydney, where my journey had begun. And he said, you take the controls and you head towards those mountains. And I did. And I was flying. And I knew right then that I was going to be a pilot. I didn't know how on earth I'd ever pass a medical, but that didn't matter because I had a dream and nothing was going to stop me. All I could do in the beginning was lie on the ground and lift my legs this far, maybe an inch, but it was better than nothing. And I practiced my walking as much as I could, and I went from the point of 2 people holding me up to 1 person holding me up, to the point where I could walk around the house holding onto the furniture as long as it wasn't too far apart. So while the doctors continued to put my body back together again, I went on with my theory study. And then amazingly, eventually, I passed my pilot's medical. And I had my bag of medication and catheters and my funny walk, and they would look at me and think, who is she kidding? She's never going to be able to do this. And sometimes I thought that too. But there was something inside of me that was burning so bright that said, don't stop. And eventually, I learned to fly. I went for my first solo and I got my private pilot's license. And then I learned to navigate. I flew around Australia and I got my unrestricted private pilot's license. And then I learned to fly in bad weather as well as fine weather, and I got my instrument rating. And then I got my commercial pilot's license. And then I got my instructor rating. And then I found myself at that same school where I'd gone for that very first flight, teaching other people how to fly. In just over 12 months after I'd left the spinal ward. I wasn't meant to live, I wasn't meant to walk, and I wasn't meant to fly. Our bodies may be limited, but it's our spirit that's unstoppable. I now know that it wasn't until I let go of who I thought I was that I had the freedom to create something completely new for my life. It wasn't until I let go of the life I thought I was supposed to have, that I'd worked so hard for, that I was able to embrace the possibilities that waited for me. I now know that my real strength never came from my body. Unlike anything you can lose in life, the defiant human spirit remains steadfast. And of this I'm certain. I am not my body. And you, my dear friends, are not yours. When you choose courage in the face of fear, you defy the things that hold you back from greatness. It's a daunting task. And you might well ask, where do I begin? Where do I start? Well, perhaps the simple words of this poem might offer a clue. He said to build a better world. I said I would, but how? The world is such a cold, dark place and complicated now. For I am small and helpless. There's nothing I can do. He said, of course there is. Just build a better you.
Have you ever done anything that you now realize was a big mistake? When I was a kid, I saw little boys in my neighborhood playing with fire and gasoline. What these little boys would do is they would sprinkle some gasoline on a sidewalk, they would strike a match, throw the match on top, and the gasoline would dance to life. And when you're 9 and you're a boy, this is fun. This is awesome. Mom and Dad are gone. The house is mine. I walk into the garage, light a piece of cardboard on fire, bend down next to a 5-gallon container of gasoline. Nobody's watching. Before the liquid comes out of it, what shows up first? The vapor, the fumes, the invisible stuff. In life, my friends, it's very seldom what we see coming that burns us. That day, those fumes raced out, grabbed that little flame, pulled it back into the container, created a massive explosion, picked me up, and launched me 20 feet against the far side of the garage. As a little boy, I got scared, I panicked, I ran on fire, through the flames, back into my mom and dad's house. Decision that changed my world. One moment, I'm a perfectly happy and healthy little fella, and then it changes. I found myself as a 9-year-old on my back with burns on 100% of my body. I am dying. I'm laying there. I'm scared and afraid and mad and sad and looking up at the ceiling, and all I could think as a child is, oh my gosh, my dad is gonna kill me when he finds out. He walks over to me, points down, John, look at me when I'm talking to you. So I look up at my mean dad, and he says, I have never been so proud. And then my dad said, I love you. I love you, I love you. And hearing all of this, I'm 9, I crossed my arms, shut my eyes, and thought, oh my gosh, nobody told my dad what happened. I had months to reflect and to listen and to pause. I hear my door open up, somebody walks in, I hear footsteps, and then this voice speaks light into the darkness. And the voice says loud and clear, kid, wake up. Wake up. Jack Buck was my childhood hero. I listened to him all 9 years of my life. Loved him. When he walked away, he moved his way down 3 doorways, leaned his head against the glass door, and just started weeping. One of the nurses walks over to him, kneels down in front of him, looks up and says, "Mr. Buck, are you okay?" And the announcer looks down and says, "I'm not sure. The little boy won't make it, will he?" The expert looks up and says, "Mr. Buck, there is absolutely not a chance. It's just his time." What Jack Buck does, it's a great example. He takes it home. He cries, he prays, he reflects, and he journals on one question: what more can I do? The following day, a little boy named John O'Leary is hanging out in darkness. I'm stretched out in this bed, tied down, can't move. I hear footsteps, a chair, a cough, and then a voice. "Kid, wake up. I'm back. You are going to live. You are going to survive. Keep fighting." Gets up, walks out, leaves me tied down still. Is in 8-second increments the man changed my world. What I learned years later, and this is cool news for all of us in this room, it also changed his life. It always changes the life of the giver. He encouraged a little boy to fight on, which allowed me to endure 5 months in the hospital, which allowed this little boy miraculously to come home. And then a month later, he sends me this baseball. Ozzie Smith was a shortstop for the Cardinals. He became a Hall of Famer. He was one of my boyhood idols. Below that ball was a note from Jack. And the note read, "Kid, if you want a second baseball, all you have to do is send a thank you letter to the guy who signed the first one. Just one problem, Jack." "What's the problem?" "Dude, you can't write." So why would he make me do something, my friends, that he knew ahead of time, man, I can't do? To show you you could, to make you. My mom and dad were trying to show me that I could, and they were trying to inspire me and make me. What my mother used to do, she would try to hand it to me, and she would say, "Baby, when you learn how to write again, you get to go back to school." Does a little boy want to go back to grade school? Probably not. Does a little boy want a second baseball, yes or no? Good leadership is about rising up and coming onto the stage and saying, "People, rise up." But great leadership and great mentoring, great love is always, not sometimes, always about coming down. It's about meeting people where they are, in their struggles, in their challenges, in their adversity. Jack came all the way down to the level of a 9-year-old. I wrote the note, mailed it off, and 2 days later, I got a second baseball. With a second note that read, "Kid, if you want a third baseball." 1987, a busy announcer sends a little boy 60 baseballs. 60. Jack taught a little boy how to write, which allowed that little boy to go back to grade school. Somehow, through God's grace, man, you graduate. Who knows how? You graduate. Graduation night, who shows up right on time, is this leader that I have looked up to my entire life. My mentor, my hero, my buddy, Jack Buck. He shows up with a package and a note. I open up the letter, then I open up the box. "Kid, this means a lot to me. I hope it means a lot to you too. This is the baseball that I received when I went into the Hall of Fame. There's only one like it in the entire world. It's yours." My mentor gave me this priceless gift that changed me from the inside out, because finally I can start believing in my dreams and the ability to build something even bigger than myself. With hands that you may think look broken, but they're not broken. They're just different. And different's not bad. I think different's good. We are part of something in this room, I think, that is global changing. It's not just about one, it's about many, it's about the world, and you are part of it. If you can leave with one takeaway, one, to change your business, to elevate your relationships, to inspire you in the community, what's one more thing you can do to live each day in pure joy?
I was diagnosed with a brain tumor. They said it wasn't possible for me. Then I was the 300-pound kid who said I wanted to be a Nike athlete. Does that even make sense? I was diagnosed with a brain tumor, and they thought it was over for me, but I'm here. I'm on a winning streak! I'm on a winning streak! Let's go!
When I was 8, I had this dream. I always wanted to be a Nike athlete, but I was a chubby kid. It didn't matter to society what I was passionate about. It only mattered what I could realistically accomplish.
I'm 305 pounds, so insecure that I wouldn't even want to go out to the club. I would be afraid of everything. My first thought in the morning was fear to look in the mirror. My second thought was fear of my first meal. See, I was addicted to food. I would have to deal with it every single day. I would eat so much. I would eat 10,000, 15,000 calories in a day, and I would wake up the next morning and my skin would be bruised because I would expand so much. And then I would just binge so much to make myself so sick that I didn't even want to do it again. And that's when I went back. I went back to my childhood dream because what society told me to do, be a businessman, it meant nothing to me when I was looking at death. What did I want to do? I'm 28 years old, 300 pounds, diagnosed with a brain tumor, and I'm going to my business partners, and I'm going to my mom, and I'm saying, I want to retire. What do you mean you want to retire? I said, I want to be an athlete. I have to do it. Like, how you gonna make money? I said, it's not about the money. I've got to do this for me. I said, I'll figure all that out. I said, well, how you gonna do it? I said, I'm gonna do an Ironman in New Zealand. They thought I was crazy. How are you gonna do an Ironman? That's like the most difficult thing in the world to do. It's a 2.4 mile swim, 112 mile bike ride, and then run a full marathon? 26.2 miles? I said, I'm gonna do it. And I'm gonna do it in 10 months. And I walked away from my business.
So I just started running. I started running around the block. Then I ran a little further. In a year's time, I lost 125 pounds and started reversing my brain tumor, building momentum for an Ironman in New Zealand. That was the contract I made for myself. So I got on a plane with my best friend Scott, and we set out to become Ironmen. But deep inside, I was afraid I wouldn't finish. I mean, how could a guy like me be an Ironman? I've always been the underdog. So it's race day. Scott and I, just two common guys surrounded by elite athletes, and we're dancing down the starting line. We hop in the water for our swim, and honestly, it was easy. It felt like we could see the finish line from here. We transitioned into the bike ride, and the fans were going crazy. I think they were cheering me on because, well, I was one of them, the common man. New Zealand, beautiful roaring hills, but those same roaring hills broke our bodies down. 12 hours into the race, and we're almost in last place. The Ironman's race director got afraid we're not gonna finish.
Steve from Ironman, how you doing? Whereabouts are you guys? You're gonna need to get behind him. You have to give him a bit of a push. So if you guys can get a word to him, the cutoff is 5:30, and he needs to be out on the road by 5:30.
I was scared. I left my company, changed my entire life. Everything was in jeopardy. I was throwing up, and my digestive system was shutting down. It hurt to even high-five the supporters. We were minutes away from disqualification. Everything was crashing down on me. Everything. My promise I made to myself, to everyone who believed in me. When you're at that wall, sometimes that wall isn't just in front of you. You're surrounded by the wall. I couldn't go over, I couldn't go through, and I couldn't go around. I had to dig deep. I picked myself up, fighting disqualification, and there it was, the finish line to an entire chapter of my life. This wasn't about 140 miles. This was about the contract I made to myself. I'm gonna be honest with you guys. I still to this day get scared to chase my dreams. But I knew that if I was gonna become a Nike athlete, I needed to do more. I needed to inspire people the same way Nike inspired me. I wanted to do something that very few people on this earth have ever done. Bike across America from Los Angeles to New York, and to help people along the way. I wanted to do it with my best friend Scott. I was scared, and so was he. Neither of us really knew what we were doing or what we were getting ourselves into. We wanted to be the inspiration for others to say, if they can do it, so can I.
That is Charlie Jabaley.
Charlie Jabaley.
This is Charlie. Good morning to you, Charlie.
Good morning.
Take a look at this man's transformation right here. Went from that to that.
Everywhere we go, we're looking for people who have dreams and how we can help them.
And then he heard about Siona.
Siona! Surprise!
By the dumpster, Charlie Jabaley popped up with balloons, surprising Siona Brand with the gift that is a dream come true. Her own car.
We all know that paying a mortgage weighs heavy on anyone's shoulders. Imagine having to do so while you're battling breast cancer.
Guys, this is Charlie. Remember him from the 6 o'clock hour.
We are completely paying off your mortgage.
I want to introduce you to the Dream Machine. I'm going to wrap it in a blank canvas, have everybody across the country write their dreams on it. We started to realize that your actions and identity become your dream, and your dream starts to become you. To quote the late JFK, we didn't do it because it was easy, but because it was hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we are willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win.